if you had to pick a target audience, would you say that VSC is more targeting the developer economy, or are you targeting the users, like the end users?
It's both. We're mainly targeting developers for the core of what VSC does, but what we're doing with wrapping is 100% user centric. Like a lot of people will, I mean, I hope a lot of people would go to our site, sign up, either get a Hive account or log in through EVM, and then wrap Bitcoin. Simple as that. Like that's the intended user base, is that they can just go on the site, they can wrap Bitcoin, they can send Bitcoin around feeless, and any user can now accept Bitcoin. Any user can now accept Lightning.
Yeah, let's pick apart the user part of things
Mm-hmm.
first. So let's say that a new user comes in and they go to the VSC site and they wrap Bitcoin, or at least they look into wrapping Bitcoin. What is going to be the initial use case of doing that? Are they going to be, you've mentioned that they can send the Bitcoin around. Does that mean that they can send Bitcoin to anybody with a Bitcoin address? Do they have to have a Hive address? And then, second part to that,
Mm-hmm.
will there be any, say, DeFi features, let's say like pooling or swapping of any kind?
Yeah, so there will be a pool, and it's you can send it to anyone on Hive and any Bitcoin address. Now the Bitcoin address is a bit more of an interesting case because there is other factors like unwrap fees and transaction fees and all of that. But the core UX is someone can go on the site, they could sign in with like an EVM or Hive wallet, and then they can start the wrapping process. So they end up getting a deposit address that's unique to them that goes to their user, and then they deposit their Bitcoin onto that address to some limit. There's a certain amount of limit per deposit they can do. And then after about 30 minutes to an hour, that gets confirmed, and now they have wrapped Bitcoin on BSC. And from there, they can either send that within BSC, the different light account users, or they can send that to Hive users. Or if they want to, they could also unwrap that to the mainnet and send it to one of their friends on Bitcoin mainnet, or even themselves if they want to do that. So you pretty much have a Bitcoin full, like you pretty much have a Bitcoin wallet. There's almost no difference between a regular wallet and Bitcoin wallet in function. The only difference is there is added fees on the unwraps because unwraps are not free. There's transaction fees on Bitcoin. There is time that the wrapping provider spends with their liquidity. And so there's of course fees for that. But in essence, they're functioning like a Bitcoin wallet. They can send and receive it. It's all the same thing. And then when you add in Lightning, where you can now receive Lightning invoices from that, you pretty much have all that you need to accept Bitcoin. As a merchant selling goods, you can accept Bitcoin easily. Sign in, make an account, you can now accept Bitcoin. No thrills, no setting up, wallets or dealing with Lightning or none of that. You can immediately do it. It's very easy, straightforward. You have an account, you already know.
Yeah, I definitely like it because then I think you're even getting into more subcategories of a target audience, which would be, going after merchants, and, obviously end users who might be sending frequent payments around. And, being that Hive is a social blockchain as well, I'm sure you could find a lot of ways to tap into the whole idea of sending Bitcoin, that is on the Hive blockchain, in a feeless way, whether it's like tipping an author. Like I guess I could kind of extrapolate and imagine that once you have this all set up, UIs like PeakD and others could, integrate a tipping feature where, say a user wants to tip an author, some fractional amount of satoshis, and they're able to do that thanks to the VSC, network allowing them.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the easiest part of it.
So, so we've talked a little bit about users. We talked a little bit about Wrap Bitcoin, and you mentioned that there's going to be a Bitcoin pool. So you've also mentioned that there's the other category, which is the developer economy,
Mm.
which I think is extremely interesting. I mean, if you look at why, and I was around, I've been around long enough to see the transition where we basically only had Bitcoin, and then Ethereum came out, and then people started talking about, this distributed, decentralized computer, and then suddenly all these developers kind of formed around Ethereum and started building things. So, I'm very interested and curious to hear how are you going after developers, to kind of build a developer economy around Hive, with a lot of the tools that you're building.
Yeah. Um, I think developers as an overall market is probably a little easier than regular users. Like users, we can't really expect what they want. They have certain needs. They may have technical, etc. The developers are more, we can understand them at least. And mainly my take on that is we need to engage and approach them. Developers know what they want generally. And if they don't, then, well, that's something we have to figure out. But developers know what they want. And if there's something that they're struggling with, we need to find out, or maybe they'll even tell us, but we need to find out what really their pain points are and how we could improve those. If there's a lack of documentation, we need to improve that. If there's issues with our SDK or other libraries that we have, we need to improve that. And we're working on doing our first release of documentation sometime soon in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to make that available for people to start playing around with and deploying contracts pretty soon. We're not quite ready yet, but the goal is that we make as much of it accessible as possible so that people can easily get working with BSC and build on it without a lot of friction. They can download the contract template, they can start playing around with it, making their contracts, they can test those contracts against mocks, they can do all of that, and it's not something that's like, there's a billion different things I have to learn, I have to figure out, and all this complexity that they have to worry about. But no, they could just download the contract template, start coding, and start experimenting with it and write tests and do mock deployments and all that stuff makes it trying to make it much more straightforward than other teams do. At least as easy as we can make it.
Yeah, I think the ease of use, the documentation, being compatible with other languages, I think that's really key here. If you had to guess, what would you say are, say, like top three external things that could be developed? And I know that obviously in a vacuum, it's difficult to imagine these things, but if you had to kind of imagine what perhaps like three new developers might come in and build using VSC, what might some of those examples look like?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't have a good answer for you right now, at least, but I do have something to mention on that. We plan on doing a hackathon at some point. So all these kind of things, like what people might externally envision or think about, will probably come up in that. So we don't have an exact date for when that's going to happen yet, but sometime in the near future, we'll do a hackathon where we could really explore that, and we'll be rewarding creators or developers based off of how creative they get with their contracts. So what's the most inspiring, important use cases they could imagine and build and actually show us?
Nice. Yeah. Again, I think it's something that in a vacuum, it's really hard to imagine what people are going to do because it's one of those
Yeah,
things
of
where you're,
course.
yeah, you're building really fundamental tools and you're putting them out in the world, and then people are going to take it and run with it in directions you kind of can't imagine. And whether you're looking at Bitcoin with what Satoshi built and now what is formed around it with thousands of tokens and all these different economies that have popped up, I don't think he envisioned any of that either. So I think it's one of those things where you just make the tools and you let people run with it, and I'm sure some really interesting things are going to come out.